There was a time when we got some funky cars with very middling levels of power, and the buyers of those cars would send them to local workshops for transformation. And those transformations were quite a lot of times not only cosmetic but also mechanical. But over time, of course, cars have become more and more complex and they're more and more difficult to work on. That is exactly why some manufacturers have decided to take matters in their own hands, and now they offer performance variants of the regular cars. One such car is one that you see behind me. It is the Venue N Line. How exactly is this different from the regular Venue that is sold in the market? Let's find out. Quite like the i20 N Line, this one, the Venue N Line, also gets revised suspension. It's about 34% stiffer than the regular Venue, which makes a hell of a lot of difference on especially broken tarmac. But it's not bad at all, because while the absorption is something that happens in a very progressive way, it's the rebound that is kind of controlled. And that's where you notice the stiffness as well, because you definitely feel that the car is riding a lot more squat. And it feels a lot more connected as well, because the contact patches don't really get bothered by the oscillations. And that's exactly what the aim has been by the engineers at Hyundai, to deliver that sense of grip that you always want from a car like this. And 34% is a big number, because Venue anyway was slightly on the stiffer side of the spectrum when it came to ride quality, and to then go even firmer on the springs and dampers is something that is going to be noticed by people. But only very selected few people are going to buy the N Line, because they know what the N Line is and they know what compromises they have to live with. So what Hyundai is trying to do with the i20 N Line, the Venue N Line, and everything else that is going to come in the future as well, is to make N Line a recognizable name for performance. Whenever you speak of Hyundai, N Line should come as a default for driving enjoyment. Again, something that the GT line did for Volkswagen. It was a Polo GT, TSI, TDI. So that is the kind of logic that is behind the introduction of the N Line. And the Venue N Line kind of delivers on that promise, because this thing is small. It's sub 4 meters. It's a subcompact crossover. And then you have this 1 liter turbocharged petrol engine, delivers about 120 horsepower, 172 Newton meter. And all of those maximum horsepowers come in very, very north in the RPM range. In fact, if you look at the brochure, I think it's rated at about 6,000 RPM. And this thing is going to run out of guts or run out of breath at around 6,400 RPM, and it genuinely does not sound all that great after, say, around 4,500 RPM. But the torque, the 172 Newton meter, is spread very nicely between, say, around 1,500-1,800 RPM till about 4,000-4,200 RPM, and that is what you need to use to have fun with this car. This is not about peak horsepower. This is about how you utilize all those torques in a very nice RPM band. You would enjoy driving the Venue N Line in a very similar way as you would the i20 N Line. Of course, the center of gravity is a little higher and you don't really have as much of body control, and you will feel the load shift for sure because it's a taller car. But the way you should extract everything out of the engine is very similar. Do not push the loud pedal into the carpet. That's only going to make you feel like, oh my god, the engine is just making a lot of unnecessary noises. It's when you're doing nice, reasonable speeds at about half throttle, that's where it is extremely beautiful and very, very nice to even listen to. I do not like shifting this car beyond 4,000. In fact, the best band, at least for me, to upshift is at about 3,700 RPM, and that kind of gives you the exact burble that you want from the exhaust. If you push it to about 4,500, 5,500, probably 6,000 RPM, max it out, it just is going to make that typical 3-cylinder drony noise, and that's not good at all. And on the downshifts, again, I do not shift at bizarre levels. I don't shift down at about 3,500 RPM, 4,000. No, I do it at about 2,600 RPM, because when we go down the gears, the revs rise, and it's again in the same power band and gives you that nice little burble from the exhaust, because this thing is only about how they've tuned the exhaust noise. So yes, if you manage that, you will have a very nice oral experience. You also get drive modes. There are three. One is normal, one is eco, sense of which I don't get, and there is sport. Now with the Venue N Line, eco just does not make sense. Why would you want to drive a car that's been tuned for performance in eco mode? Just drive it in either normal or sport, and that's exactly what I've been doing. So as expected, the moment you get into sport, the engine and the gearbox, it just kind of feels a little bit spirited compared to the regular normal version. The gearbox holds the revs a lot longer, and the engine sounds a little bit angrier as well. But that's about it. Nothing really that is going to alter the personality of the car in a big way. And I'm also a very big fan of this steering wheel itself. Very beautiful design, great rim thickness as well, and the diameter is perfect. So it suits this car. The width and the length of this car is just perfectly matched to the steering wheel. And then you also have paddles to control that 7-speed DCT gearbox, which is kind of a weak link because it's not the most ideal gearbox. It's not the most perfectly matched gearbox. There is a little bit of a response lag from the DCT, and you always get the sense that a 6-speed manual gearbox with this engine would have been a shining combination. But well, Hyundai has decided to give only the DCT, so you don't really have any other option. But you know what? It kind of works. You have to again get adjusted to the nature of the gearbox. But when you start understanding this gearbox and when you start living with its nature and the way it is married to the engine, that's when you will start enjoying it as well. And I really like the brakes on the Venue N Line. In the past, I've not had the best experience with the brakes on any of the Hyundais. I think the ABS calibration is always a little flawed because you get on the anchors and then after the lockup, the initial lockup is sensed, then the ABS starts pulsating and starts kicking in. It's not been the case over here, or at least I've not pushed it to such an extent that it is going to give me that sense. But whatever hard braking I've done, it's held its line and the ABS has worked very well. There is a little bit of a fishtail effect that you feel from behind the wheel, but it's not something that is going to give you a big lump down your throat. And the bite on the brakes is absolutely superb. But even more impressive is the way the pedal feels. The pedal is something that gives you a lot of confidence, and you can definitely stand on it with the confidence that this thing is going to be absolutely sorted. So brakes, big marks. On features, you get everything that you get in this segment from other cars as well. Also from the regular Venue, you get vehicle stability management, you get every other safety element as well. And then on infotainment side of things, you get Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, Bluetooth connectivity, everything. So yeah, Hyundai, they established the game of features and they've just been at it. They've been giving you features after features, and this just continues in the N Line as well. And it's actually now becoming almost like a drag for us to talk about features because every other car now comes with infotainment that is packed to the gills. So yeah, just talking about Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, it's what every other car has it now, and we kind of should have a playbook where we eliminate mentioning these things. But we have to, we must, and we do. On cabin practicality, I think the fronts are okay. You just sit a little high up. I would have wanted myself to be a little lower in the seats, but the seat adjustment would go only that much. And the steering wheel needs to be telescopic because this is aimed at driving enjoyment. And for anyone buying a car like this, having a good commanding driving position is the first default factor. If you don't have control on the steering wheel, then that sense of involvement with the road and the car is just kind of lost somewhere. In the back as well, space is okay, but the bigger thing is that you get adjustability for the back angle. So you can adjust the backrest a little bit on the back seats, and that's a good thing to have. And then again on features, it's got wireless charging. You get USB ports at the back, so everybody in this car is going to be pretty charged up. There we have it, the Venue N Line, pretty much exactly how the i20 turned out to be. The i20 versus the i20 N Line, step above. This thing versus the regular standard Venue is a step above. The suspension and the 34% stiffness definitely works, and it gives you a little sense of engagement on the road. The steering also has been weighted up. That also has made a little bit of a difference. And the fact that it is a beautiful, beautiful steering wheel itself just adds to the experience. And then the road holding, the handling, it's all okay. I'm not really going to say that it's a hot hatch. It should have been ideally, but it's not something that is going to put a massive beaming smile on your face, essentially because of the high CG value. Had it been a low slung car like the i20, because that thing puts a smile on your face whenever you go around corner. But as a crossover that's been given that small dose of excitement, this thing has turned out to be absolutely fine. It is going to serve you well. It has all the practicality of the regular Venue. It just gives you that extra sense of involvement. The exhaust note is definitely something that is going to catch your ears. Just overall, it's just that bit extra to drive, and that kind of makes a big difference for sure.